Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for watching my YouTube channel again. And today I have a very interesting guest. I find so anyway. Her name is Lorna Hines, and she is from African American ancestry, and she's very lovely, intelligent, and beautiful soul as well. And I've read up on her website. You can do that as well. I'll put her website and her Facebook and everything in the little comments later on, so you can check her out. But she's very versatile, because if you look on her website, she's not only a medium, but she's a psychotherapist. She's an inspirational speaker. She's a healer. She's an author. So I'm very honored that she's taken the time to be with me here today and to have a little talk about spirituality and her journey. So welcome, Lorna, and thank you for joining me. I'm very pleased to have you.
My absolute pleasure. And may I ask that it's been just a joy meeting you and also Jason, and
Oh,
that I so appreciate you coming to our events and participating. So thank you again for inviting me.
yeah. Well, thank you for coming, and your events are wonderful. For anyone interested, they are usually via Facebook that you put them on, I believe. And there are all sorts of events with all sorts of people, and it's always interesting and thought-provoking, for me at least. So yeah, so what I always ask any of my guests, the first question is, how did you get on this spiritual path? What brought you here?
Well, I was very fortunate, Ursula, to be brought up in a family where religion and spirituality was something that was welcomed. In part, that had to do with my maternal grandmother, who very much was religious, but also very spiritual. So
Mhm.
it was not uncommon to see uh, my family members talk about dream interpretation, or
Okay.
they talked about angels and archangels. They lit candles for inspiration. And my grandmother, maternal grandmother, was herself a medium and an intuitive. We didn't call it that way, but she used her healing energies to help us when we were uh, sick in some way. I mean, she could even cure hiccups, if you could imagine. I'm serious. She
That's
would lay
cool.
hands, she would pray, and somehow the hiccups would ease. And there's a famous story where her daughters, which my mother was included in that, were preparing to go for a dance, a wonderful, wonderful dance in their area. And they prepared the whole week with what they were going to wear and the
Mhm.
hairstyles and the makeup. And as they were getting ready for the dance, uh, they were approached by their mother, who prior to that day said yes, they could attend, but then came to them and said, "Take your clothes off, wash your
Oh,
faces. You're not going to the dance."
oh,
And just like you're doing,
yeah,
they began to cry
of
and
course.
scream and be very upset. And she was very calm, and she was very emphatic in the way she said it. "You're not going to the dance." So they complied because she ruled the roost. And
Hmm.
then what they found out is the next day they learned from friends who had attended the dance that there was a awful, awful, awful row there.
Oh,
People were trampled upon each other. Many had to be hospitalized
oh my
because they
gosh.
were injured. And actually, it seems my grandmother had a premonition that
Oh yeah.
something would happen. So you see, this type of thing was very much part of my upbringing. And then as a psychotherapist, you can understand intuition is important. Your
Yeah.
sense of people and also empathy is important.
Yes.
So I always had these types of feelings for my patients. And I would say I also, even from a little girl, saw spirits, but it
Mm,
wasn't anything that I pursued in terms of learning or whatever. But then somehow I began to feel, even though I had a very successful career in
mhm,
mental health and substance abuse, and went up the line being an administrator and um, cabinet level positions in state government, and also taught in graduate schools of social work, but there was something missing. I felt like there
mm,
was still something missing.
yeah,
And I pursued different avenues of ways in which to increase and enhance this thing inside of me that felt
yeah.
was missing. And I attended a development group with a wonderful woman and some women from different places, and went on to begin studies with some of the world renowned mediums around 2010. And
Mm.
the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that inner soul is calling you to find it somehow. Eh? I mean, even though you're happy in your life and you're happy with what you're doing, it's that something that's pulling you to search for it. So I'm glad you did, because now we can all enjoy your mediumship and your healing work. So, which brings me on to the present day. I know you're a very busy lady. You are involved with a lot of courses. So maybe you'd like to share a little bit about that, where your passion lies at the moment.
Well, I would say my passion is in a lot of different directions.
Mhm.
My passion really fundamentally hasn't changed over the years. Um, I I I I feel mediumship is very much a healing enterprise.
Mm,
So I really identify very much in the healing aspects and the extent to which we all, including yourself, are able to uh, offer care and
mm,
compassion to people that often have very unseen hurts, and whatever that means and however that manifests.
mhm,
So I have a wonderful mediumship practice. I'm also a trance medium. I do quite a bit of work in trance healing. And even yesterday, I had a wonderful woman to work with. And when the trance healing session was completed, she said, um, I, I heard everything from you today that I needed to hear. And
mm,
I just was so uh, grateful that I could be a force for spirit in that way
mm,
to touch this woman.
yeah.
Uh, I also do teaching. I've held classes both in trance mediumship, inspirational speaking, and I've also offered mentorship, a year-long mentorship program for
Mhm,
students that were studying uh, their mediumship. And besides that, I have a book percolating, which I hope to publish sometime this year. I'm about three-quarters of the way finished in the
ah,
chapters. And I've been working with a editor. I also have skills in numerology. I don't talk about it a lot, but I studied numerology, and I think it's a great uh, uh, adjunct or tool to
mm,
use if you're doing intuitive work with people.
yeah,
And so I do
definitely.
quite a bit of that as well. And then I host the mediumship group, Mediums of African Ancestry, that
Mhm,
you are familiar with.
yeah.
And it is very much near and dear to my heart because I think fundamentally, in many ways, I am a teacher.
Mm,
And so this is a learning community, a diverse learning community with people that have all sorts of different interests. We absolutely adhere to the understanding of the fundamentals of mediumship and intuitive work, and
yeah.
all of the ethics and the importance of evidence and understanding mediumship as the continuation of life. So those fundamentals are understood, that that's part of the program. But
Yeah.
in addition to that, it's important for us to begin to understand the identity and the contributions of people of color, both in
Hmm.
mediumship and also in spiritualism.
Yeah.
Whether it was an act of omission or commission, we are not going to labor that, but we want to research and we want to begin to understand that the information that we have received regarding the modern spiritualist
Mm.
pioneers do not do not include people of color.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because there were so many people like Harriet Wilson,
Hmm.
William Cooper Nels, so many that were not included. The
Yeah.
Cirque Harmonique out of uh, New Orleans. Um, so we have to begin to expand the narrative that we have been presented with as mediums and spiritualists, because
Hmm.
that narrative is not correct.
Hmm.
There are people of color that were
Yeah.
very much part of modern spiritualism. And there are many people of color presently, such as myself, that are mediums, uh,
Hmm.
healers, and so forth. Because I have heard, even on Facebook, where I've heard people say there are no Black mediums. How unfortunate. It gives the impression that there's something special about white mediums, that spirit has endowed them with some specialness. And we know this is not the case. We know
No.
that in the spirit world, there are white people, black people, Asian people, people
Mm.
that are of native cultures, people that
Yeah.
speak a whole host of languages. But what it, what do we know? They have made it a beautiful summer land, as Andrew Jackson Davis talks about heaven. This beautiful summer land that not only is there beautiful colors, but they are beautiful colored people that are all good, all getting along with one another,
Mm.
communicating with their minds, and trying to figure out how they're going to help us here on the earth realm to
Yeah.
figure all of these problems out.
Well, yeah, hopefully. Yes, I mean, that's very true. I hadn't thought about that. And so I think it was in the presentation that Latifu did that it was mentioned. And I'm not a spiritualist myself. I have started some studies with them. But it is true. There's no mention of Asian mediums or colored mediums, nothing. Um, it's like it's only Europe and there is some from America, but only white people, yes. And I think maybe that's because of the history, that it wasn't put in there at the time. But then now would be a good time to make a correction to this, I feel anyway. Because surely they were there, like you said, and they just weren't mentioned or weren't noticed by the ministers of the past, who made the pioneers, so to speak. Because I think there was a lot less women in there at first as well, which is changing now because there's now more and more women being added to the list. So I think that's kind of like, well, I wouldn't say the same problem, but it's also a problem. There's I think we still have a lot of problems on this earth that we need to sort through.
Well, actually, there were women, as you know, as you pursue your spiritualist
Hmm.
study. The seven principles was given
Yeah,
to spiritualism by Emma Hardage Britton,
yeah.
and following her, you have, of course, Dr. Maria Hayden, who was an American who brought
Hmm.
spiritualism to the UK. So I
Yeah.
think women have had a fundamental role in the development of spiritualism and also mediumship
Hmm.
historically. So now what we have to do is begin to understand the extent to which people of color also had enormous
Mm,
contributions and were fundamentally excellent mediums, trans mediums, healers, and so that we study their lives and study what they have contributed.
mm,
So it enhances our ability. So perhaps when we go to circles or we go to workshops and we see, gee whiz, there are no Black people here, there are no Asian
mm.
people here, there are no Native people here. Well, how come?
Yeah.
How come? And maybe we'll talk with our workshop leaders or our tutors or our teachers, and we might say, gee, is there a way that we can uh, diversify? We can be more inclusive so that
Mm,
we learn each other from each other. You know, it's
exactly.
so interesting. Last week, I was invited to speak before the Norwegian
Hmm.
Spiritualist Association. And yes, I was the only one again. But that's okay because
Mm,
maybe they opened their door and I'm going to come, and then somebody else is going to come, and somebody else is going to come. And then
exactly.
hopefully we have a beautiful, diverse environment that we can
Yeah.
share and really serve spirit in the way that I believe spirit intends us to serve.
Mm, for sure. Yes, and it does make you wonder because most circles are open to everyone, but I think, like you said, if people see you there speaking for them, that they might feel more comfortable coming, and then more will come. Because I can imagine if you're the only one in a circle, it doesn't make you feel at home or secure, maybe even. So I do hope, because I do a practice circle, and everyone's welcome. So please do come. Just find me on Facebook. So what are your plans for the future? What is it you like to do, or like to put your energy in the rest of this year or maybe next year, because COVID does put a bit of restrictions on everything. But
Well, yes and no. I do feel that the restriction that COVID has exerted has, I think, inspired people to find other vehicles. People that often said, oh, well, you can't do trance online and you can't do mediumship
mm,
online. We've experimented and we've given ourselves the opportunity to try something new. So I'd like to continue my work online. I will tell
mhm,
you, I have been first among many that said, I don't want to be involved with technology. I'm not technology savvy,
mm,
but I have grown accustomed to it. So I'd like to continue my work online. I'd like to continue uh, my one-on-one readings with people, my gallery readings, my demonstrations in churches
mm,
and spiritual centers. I, of course, want to continue my work and expand even the number of participants in our mediums of African ancestry. And I'd like to engage a lot of our world-renowned tutors for them to come to participate and also learn and perhaps begin to change or
mm,
initiate change in the history that we have been given regarding modern spiritualism. And of course, as I mentioned, I have a book brewing, and with
mm.
God's help and my spirit teams, uh, I want to get that finished and get it published.
So
And
what will
after,
this book be about? What is it? Can you give a
well,
sneak peek?
yeah, sure, sure. Um, I, as you know, had a 40 odd year career in psychotherapy and mental health and addictions and functioning in lots of different
Mhm,
capacities, as well as my university teaching. And I think over the years, I have found lots of different vehicles that may be helpful to people. So I call it kind of a psychosocial revolutionary way of thinking about problems and issues and things that have impacted us, such as various traumas, various issues. For example, many of us, both white people, Black people, all people, are very much impacted by the murders of many men of color in our
Yeah.
country. So, how do we begin to address that? How do we begin to cope and manage with our feelings with situations such as this?
Yeah.
How do we begin also to understand the various intersections of the character, of the personality of people that uh, at times may intensify their reactions to murders and different traumas,
Yeah.
sexual abuse, incest. So I cover all these topics and I
Brilliant.
offer straight talk. This is how I've captured it. Straight talk for ways in which we can cope and manage some of the vicissitudes of trauma and chaos and hurts and pain in our life.
Yeah. That sounds like a really interesting topic for, and I hope you finish your book because
Yes, I will.
I think I would like to read it because it's yeah, it's a very, it's a topic that speaks to a lot of people because there's hurt and trauma in, you know, every country, and
Yes,
there's things happening that are wrong in every country. So yeah, to find out how you can cope with that, that would be really, really interesting. So I'd like to thank you for your time for doing this with me. And it's with most, like with most of my guests, it's gone and flown by, and I'm sure we could have talked for hours longer about various subjects. But who knows? In the future, I might just ask you back. I will be putting Lorna's website links and Facebook links to her groups. Uh, I will add it onto the YouTube, and you know, do go and check it out because she does put on some very interesting events, and they're usually for free to attend. And they, yeah, for sure, they make you think. They make you maybe rethink your values or your standards, and that's always a good thing in life because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. So thank you again, Lorna, and
you're welcome.
yeah, I'll,
Most welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
thank you.